what we're talking about is BIM. It's the other word for it. BIM is the term which means this thought of modeling as opposed to just drawing lines on a sheet. And so what happens is when you make a change in the model, it actually shows up throughout the different views. That means if I were to change like a window, take a window out, then it's actually going to reflect in my floor plan and my elevations and everywhere else. So it's just done one time. So that's the beauty of a model. The workflow, as far as BIM in traditional drafting, what you have is you have plans which make the virtual model, and then from that, sections and elevations and construction documents, which is what CDs mean, those all go in that direction. So all of this is kind of going in this direction. The ultimate goal is construction documents. In BIM, what's happening is you have the model. The model controls everything. The model is what generates your plans. The model is what generates your elevations and your sections and your schedules and your construction documents. So all that comes from this very model-centric approach that is what BIM offers. So that's what we're going to be seeing. A few terms here. You have host. Your host assemblies, which are essentially things that don't move. That'd be like your walls and your roof, things of that nature, things that actually are not going to go anywhere. Hosted components would be like doors and windows. Annotation are your dimensions. Datum are these symbols such as this right here. And then you have different standalone components like these shrubs. So there's different things that are actually part of Revit. Revit uses what is known as families for pretty much everything that's going to be there. So that means as you're working with Revit, you're going to have different kinds of walls, and every kind of a wall is a family. Okay, so you'll have walls that would be exterior walls. You'll have walls that would be for commercial use. You'll have walls that are for interior use. You'll have walls that are for actual partial height usage and so forth. You'll have walls that are for garages. Okay, so these are all things that you're going to have. And so as you're working with Revit, everything's going to be a family. Walls are families, roofs are families, windows are families, doors are families. They all have families. And this is all content that there's a ton of content in the same way there is with AutoCAD. So if you can't find it in Revit the way it's installed, you can go find it someplace. So it's all out there. And so this is all great stuff if you know where to look. Building information modeling. The next thing is your Revit and construction documents. Your title block is generated right from Revit. The views are generated from Revit, and the sheets are generated from Revit. So all of it goes with the end game of producing construction documents. That's where we're going with this whole thing. The interface. Let's take a look at the interface here. So there's all these numbers. Let's see, if you're in our book, let me see where this would be in our book. It would be in chapter 1.
6.
Yeah, question?
1-6.
1-6, okay, thank you. So on page 1-6, this discussion starts with what are the components of your drawing right there. So we'll talk about just what they are because some of the stuff's a little bit different. A lot of it's the same as in CAD. Okay, so going down here, number 1 is your quick access toolbar. We have the same kind of thing in AutoCAD. AutoCAD is the same kind of a thing, different tools, but the same kind of approach. Your status bar is number 2, and your status bar is actually down here at the bottom. Status bar is down there. Yeah, let me get that out of the way there. Okay, so your status bar is down at the bottom of your screen. Down here, this is actually what leads us into different kinds of details. In the same way the status bar in AutoCAD is over on the lower right. Number 3 is your File tab. This is actually where we'd actually go to save and open drawings, right there. Number 4 is the ribbon. The ribbon is this whole construction right up here, just like it is in AutoCAD. The ribbon's right going to be there, same kind of a thing. And as you select different items on the tab, your ribbon's going to change, just like in AutoCAD. Your options bar, which is number 5, shows up right here. Depending upon what you have selected, you're going to have an options bar, which is kind of like the command line in AutoCAD. It's going to be right up here, where different options. So your status bar down here and options kind of take over the role of what your command line does in AutoCAD. Your properties palette, number 6. Okay, now this is actually pretty similar to AutoCAD. Again, you got your properties palette over here, number 6, but the properties are going to be specific to what different architectural elements are. So in this particular case, it's a floor plan, and it tells us what's going on with that particular floor plan, lets us see the properties of it. Now, number 7 is the project browser. This is something that's new. This is something that's different, very, very unique to Revit. And the project browser is really what allows you to see your model and to know how to slice it, dice it, and see different kinds of information inside of it. And so, as we have that going on right there, the project browser is what we're going to want to be familiar with. Now, one thing that I want to make you aware of is when you start to work with Revit, one of the things that's going to happen is as you work with it, you're going to, at times, you may find out that these two are not there. You always want to make sure that properties and your project browser show up. And there's a place to find it up here under View. If you don't see them, you can go in there and make sure they're checked, and you can go ahead and pull them up from there. The View window is this whole area in here. That's where you actually do your drawing, same as in AutoCAD. You've got a navigation bar, same as in AutoCAD. There's a little navigation bar right here. And then you have your view control bar, which is down here. This is actually how you change your visibility and what it's going to look like. That's how we saw that. So in the book, it explains what these are, page by page as you go through there. And if you want to go into a little more detail, I'm not going to, go into a lot of detail with it. But there's a lot of content here that's really good to read through and understand what's going on here, just to kind of go into a little more detail. As far as starting projects and opening projects, works pretty much the same way it does in AutoCAD. And when you are working with a project in Revit, its file extension is RVT. RVT. And so, so what you got here is your project files have a file extension of RVT. Your family files, and these would be the different kinds of files that would be for your doors, for your windows, for your plumbing fixtures. Those are family files, RFA, and then your template files are RTE. So those are different, file extensions you need to be familiar with. Okay, now when you're starting a project, you will also be using templates in the same way you do with AutoCAD. So as you begin to start a project, please note that the default is construction. That's the default. However, you don't ever want to use construction. It's going to give a bunch of stuff that you don't want, and you'll just have to delete it out. You want to stick with architectural template.
What page is this on?
What's that?
What page is this on in the book? 121.
Okay, yeah, I guess 721. It talks about that, and or 121. And so on page 121, you're going to, for this class, we're going to be using the architectural template exclusively. All right, not that it's the only one to use, but for what we're doing, that's the only one we're going to use. So please note that when you start a project, you will have to click on the word architectural template. If you don't, you'll get the construction template, and then it's going to give you a bunch of stuff, and you say, hey, there's all this stuff in my project, and I'll say, what template did you use? And you'll say, I don't know. And I'll know it was a construction template. So please, use the architectural template as you're going through here.
So does that pop up once you hit new?
I'll show you how it works. If I'm here, and if I go to File, and if I go to New, this is what you get. Okay, and you want to change it from construction template to architectural template every time, okay? That's just the way you want to do it. If you're working for somebody else, that's fine, but for this class, you're going to want to do that. So if I hit OK, and I go ahead and hit that, it brings you into this very familiar interface right here, where nothing's going on, it's just this open file. I've got my properties right up here. I've got my project browser down here, and all is right with the world. That's how it's going to be. So that's how you start a new project. Now, nothing exists in it. If I go to my 3D view, there's nothing there. If I go back to level 1, there's nothing there. If I go to my East view, there is something there, because by default it gives me 2 levels, level 1 and level 2. And so therefore I do have level information, although nothing's been populated yet. So that's